Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the latest episode of The Water Cooler. My name is Ryan Saba, the most electrifying voice in sports information. And with me, as always,
It's me. It's Lukey C, a.k.a. the Crockpot. We got some takes simmering over the weekend. What are we talking about today?
So today we are going to do, we're gonna recap the 2020 draft. I think one thing for our fans that have been with us from the beginning is last year we kind of started late and we did a full off-season recap. I don't think you can expect that this year. We're going to do 2020 recap. We probably are going to circle back around. There's still some big names in free agency out there. So we'll circle back around for some of those big names in free agency sign, and we will do a free agency recap, and then we'll do a little bit of a preview, obviously, as we always do, of the 2020 season, if there is a 2020 season. But today we're going to talk about the draft that took place last week. It was supposed to be in Las Vegas, obviously with, COVID-19, everybody is at home. So the NFL elected to utilize a fully virtual draft with some pretty strict rules. The GMs were only allowed to be in a room sort of by themselves. They were allowed to have one IT person on hand to help with any issues. How'd you feel, in general about the virtual nature of the draft? How'd you think it went? Just kind of any thoughts there?
I thought it was fun. I thought it was fun as hell. Obviously we had the live draft show, so we were kind of experiencing it live, but so people got to see that. But for the most part, I thought, it went off without a hitch for the most part. And I think it was Peter King who had spoken to. I can't remember who it was, but maybe Dan Patrick or somebody on the radio that week, and they talked about, there was a story go out about a glitch in the first 2 minutes, and basically he laid it all out, said, it delayed at about 2 minutes and 30 seconds. Aside from that, everything was set up. These people could call and text they call him the keeper of the cards at the draft. So they had direct lines to him. They had a conference call with all 32 teams on it. A muted conference call except for the team that was on the clock. So there was just really, I thought that stuff was kind of all played up a little bit. Not that they needed any help for ratings, because it was a ratings monster to begin with. It's the closest thing that we've had to live sports in 2 months. So, but I thought it went off without a hitch. I thought it was fun. I thought it was cool to see, the different people and their backdrops and their, with their families and everything. And, I thought it was fun. What'd you think?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think you hit the nail on the head. I wouldn't have known if anything was going on Thursday night from a technical, glitch perspective, because we were so in the zone, with the live stream, which I thought was really, really fun. I mean, obviously we went 4 hours. I'm assuming at some point we will get the file, and we will post that if folks want to go back and watch. I don't know if you want to sit there and watch us talk for 4 hours, but I will say there was no dead air for 4+ hours. I mean, we kept it going. It got towards the end there. It got a little. Luke had couple too many wine spritzers, and Flathers was a little. He just kind of lost energy there. But I thought it went well. Look, I mean, I enjoyed it. I think again, you hit the nail on the head as well. There's nothing really else going on, so it would have been great regardless. I think, obviously the city of Las Vegas missed out on a really big opportunity. The last couple of years they've been moving the draft around. It was in Nashville last year, and apparently Nashville was just a party. I think one of the most important things is that next year it will be in the city of Cleveland. And I don't know. We're gonna have to figure something out. I don't know if a live stream is gonna suffice for that. We probably are gonna have to try to get up there for that. But look, I thought it went well. I thought the NFL did a great job. They certainly have the resources. They have the if anybody can hire a world-class IT crew to turn something around in less than a week, it's them. It went well. I thought ESPN and NFL Network did a really, really good job. Obviously, Todd McShay, a late curveball. He had contracted coronavirus and couldn't be on there, which, I really like Todd McShay, so I thought that was a little bit of a disappointment. But other than that, I thought the teams handled it well. I thought the league handled it well. I thought the networks handled it well. I thought the water cooler handled it well. So yeah, that's it. So let's go ahead. Let's get into
a couple things before we get in there.
Oh, okay.
That we wouldn't have known about had we had just our regular everyday draft. The same thing that we do every year. We found out that Cliff Kingsbury, in addition to being an NFL coach, also sells dope. There's no other way to have that house unless you sell dope.
Something. What did they say? What did Trey Wingo say? He was with Texas Tech, right? He's like, he ain't in Lubbock no more, right? he ain't in Lubbock no more. That's probably how he got what's her face for a while, Holly Saunders.
Holly Saunders, yeah. But then we had the CeeDee Lamb. I don't know if you saw that's the phone grab. I don't remember seeing it live, but he was not having that.
Oh, I saw it live. Boys got hands, boy.
You got the Isaiah Wilson, his girlfriend, getting pulled off his lap by Isaiah Wilson's mom.
Yes.
Belichick's dog was out here making picks all day Saturday, sitting in the captain's chair. And then I also noticed that Zach Taylor has a self-assembly desk that he must have gotten at Walmart or something.
He looks like he's about 25 years old. I mean, he's not much older than that. I think he's like 31 or something.
Yeah, he's not much. I mean, he's young. He's the youngest.
He looks like he went to prom in the last few years.
All right, but that's pretty much all I got on.
So let's just move right into it. Let's get into the picks. Let's talk about some of your favorite picks. I mean, I think there's kind of three categories that fit here. Just guys that you really like. I think guys that are really good fits with the organization that picked them. And I think guys that have the opportunity because of deficiencies with the team that they were picked by, the opportunity to kind of come in and make an impact right away. So I think there's three different categories here. Talk to me about some of the guys you liked and why.
Well, I think my favorite pick, which was I'll say it was the best pick. I think it was the best pick of the draft was Jerry from his yacht being able to land CeeDee Lamb at 17. I think that's a top 2 to 3 guy in the entire draft. And to see him slip that far was pretty incredible. Everyone thought going in that it was going to be Chase on the end from LSU,
Yeah.
And there was a lot of talk about Jerry being sequestered by himself. And just, we've heard the stories about Manziel and some other stuff where they've had to step in and kind of save Jerry from himself. But I think he really crushed it. And he went with the best player on the board, which
was a no-brainer.
CeeDee Lamb, yeah. I think we talked about it on the show, but I think that was just the best pick of the draft in general, just because of how far he fell and the caliber of player he is. The fit's something that we can talk about, but they got a lot of versatility now in that core. All three of those guys can play in the slot. I think all three of them can play outside. They just got a lot of stuff they can do there. I really like that pick. Another one of mine was Tyler Johnson in the 5th to the Bucks.
Yeah.
Now Godwin.
Soda.
What's that? Yeah.
Soda. Yeah.
Godwin can play a lot in the slot, but Tyler Johnson's probably going to be their slot guy moving forward. He's going to have a tough time finding targets right now, but I think he's in a great spot to learn a ton. But immediate impact, guys. I'm not going to go too deep into this because I think it's the 4 tackles. I think that this class, if you watch the show or you listen to us at all, like, how much I love all 4 of those tackles.
Yeah.
And I just think that they're going to have the most immediate impact. They're all 4 going to start, and that's Thomas, Wills, and then Becton and Wirfs. So all 4 of them are going to start. They're going to make immediate impacts, and I think they're going to be – you're not going to see many hiccups. I know some of them have to switch positions compared to what they did in college, but most of them are going to slide right in. And then perfect fits. I have a few. Jalen Reagor. There was quite a bit of discourse on Thursday on our show about Jalen Reagor. I just wanted to go a little bit farther into it. I think he's an immediate starter for them. Maybe because they do have a little bit of a depleted receiving core. They did lose Nelson Aguilar to free agency. Alshon, they were trying to move him, can't really. So everyone knew they were hurting for wide receivers, but I think he's an explosive guy. I know he's an explosive guy. We've seen the testing numbers. He can play outside, and his fit with Wentz is pretty good. I just think that compared to Jefferson, who I also have here as my next perfect fit, is just a better fit in Philly.
Yeah, I think for, I just want to comment on that. We were at the time, we were a little critical of that pick. It was really because Jefferson was still on the board and the kind of production that Jefferson had at LSU. But I think as I started to learn, a lot of that just had to do with I didn't know much about Jalen Reagor, right? So as I started to learn more, read more, obviously you saw that video I sent out that Dan Orlovsky – Dan Orlovsky talked about doing a TCU game 2 years ago. Jalen Reagor was the best player on the field. So, look, we always talk about it. If that's your guy, you do the evaluation. You got to trust your process. If that's your guy, you go get him, and then you got to worry. You got to worry about, if he doesn't pan out, then it's on you. But if he does, you look like a hero. So, yeah, for sure.
They've got pretty good draft history too with Howie over there. So I'm not really worried about that. Another thing, too, is his production dropped off pretty severely because he had a true freshman quarterback.
Yep.
Only 61% of his targets were even catchable. So, I mean, it was pretty much the worst quarterback situation of any of these guys that were drafted. But
I don't know. We'll talk about one on my side.
I have a feeling we'll get to that later. And I still think that Reagor's was worse. We got Jefferson, though. Like I said, I think that, he's going to be a stud. I mean, Diggs left behind 94 targets. Jefferson had 130 last year at LSU.
Yeah.
He might eat all those and more. I think he's great in the slot. I think he's a nice fit with Cousins. And I think just more on these two. Like, these two are now tied at the hip. I think when you look at these guys going forward, when you talk about Jalen Reagor, you're going to talk about Justin Jefferson and vice versa. We see that a lot with quarterbacks.
Yeah.
Back to back. I think you'll see that a lot. But I just think so many people had Jefferson mocked to the Eagles, and I think that I maybe even in a vacuum like Jefferson a little bit more. But the way that these two teams fit, I think they went to the right places. Whether or not they're picked for so behind, I don't think it really matters. But I just think so many people had that, and the LSU success, as we talked about.
Well, obviously Philadelphia didn't like something. Not necessarily they didn't like something about Justin Jefferson. There was just things about Jalen Reagor that they liked better. So,
right.
I mean, that to me is the indicator. So,
and then lastly, this one really pains me to say it, but Patrick Queen feels like the quintessential Ravens linebacker. A little small, but he's a raw athlete. He's still only 20. I mean, it just felt like a guy. Everyone had him mocked there. It just felt like a guy that they were going to go get and make him, a Raven.
Yeah, I mean, for me, just guys that I really liked, that I thought I really liked was Derek Brown, who went number 7 to Carolina. I mean, he's just an absolute monster. He's a really, really good football player. I think, one of the reasons why potentially you don't see him higher there is because, there was really good guys in some of the glamour positions. There was 3 highly touted quarterbacks. There was a every decade kind of a defensive end in Chase Young. I think Okudah was, a premier talent. So you saw a guy like Derek Brown, it's not a sexy pick, right? But I think you're going to –
negative, but, that's a textbook first-time head coach, first-time NFL personnel pick.
Let's not make a mistake here, right?
There you go.
And I think they're going to be fine. And I thought Tristan Wirfs at 13 to Tampa, Wirfs falling into their lap, obviously, you talked about it. All 4 tackles were, rated in different places. I think, consistently you saw Wirfs more at the top of that list. And for him to slide, a really athletic, probably the most athletic one of those 4 guys. Obviously there was some questions that I had about his position, but I think he's a really good football player. Whether he plays tackle, guard, or whatever, he's still really good. So I really like it. I think from a fit perspective, you hit the nail on the head. Patrick Queen at 28 to the Ravens. They were looking for the C.J. Mosley replacement. Obviously, he's not the size of C.J. Mosley, but C.J. Mosley, SEC pedigree, went to Alabama. I think very, very similar player to C.J. Mosley, and obviously he doesn't come with the $120 million price tag or whatever the Jets paid him, and he only played 1 or 2 games last year. But he made a huge impact in that one game that he played. He had a pick 6. But I really like Patrick Queen in terms of immediate impact. You hit the nail on the head here too. I think CeeDee Lamb dropping to 17. He's going to fit in very well with that offense. You look at, now you got Amari Cooper. Now you got CeeDee Lamb. You got Gallup, who they took last year in the first round, or 2 years ago in the first round.
I think it was the second round.
Was he? But he was another high draft pick. The point is, they have 3 high draft picks at the wide receiver position. Obviously, everybody knows about their offensive line. Everybody knows about Ezekiel Elliott. Maybe a hole at tight end, possibly. Obviously with Witten getting older. But
I like Jarwin, though. I think that there's at least a little something there.
Sure. I think from an immediate impact standpoint, CeeDee Lamb's going to come in right away and he's going to make a huge impact. I think another guy that's going to have a huge impact.
Gallup was a 3rd round pick, but yeah.
Gallup was a 3rd round pick?
Yeah.
Getting old, man. My recall isn't what it used to be. The database is huge at this point.
I just like to have the facts.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I was just throwing that out there. I did not have Michael Gallup written down here anywhere in my notes. So that was an ad lib. I think another guy that's going to have an immediate impact is Jonathan Taylor, who was taken at 41 by the Indianapolis Colts. I mean, when you talk about production, the guy was the most productive running back in college football history. So for me, he's going to come right in. They're even talking about trading Marlon Mack at this point. Obviously teams really aren't trading for running backs. So, I think, one of the things that's really hurt Indy over the past couple of years is, lack of talent at running back, lack of depth at running back. I think now all of a sudden you slide a guy like Taylor in there, who, by the way, Louis Riddick talked about this when he was drafted. He's basically, and I don't want to jinx him, so knock on wood, he's basically the only guy in this draft that's 100% clean from an injury standpoint. The guy's never had an injury at any level. So you think about durability, you think about his size, ran a 4.39 at the 40, his production at the college level. Obviously the Big Ten is a more physical league. So, there's not a lot of question there if he's going to be able to handle the physicality. Obviously it's a whole different world because, Purdue isn't on the schedule next year, but I really like him to come in and make an immediate impact right away. And I got 2 guys that I thought were really good value picks. I thought Zach Bond going in the 3rd round at 73 to New Orleans. Statistically, 2nd in the Big Ten, everything behind Chase Young. Great football player, a little bit undersized middle linebacker at Wisconsin, but obviously, Wisconsin linebackers have a little bit of a pedigree. Those guys are able to make the next step. So I think him going in the 3rd round, when you saw him potentially mocked in a lot of places, sometimes in the 1st round, definitely in the 2nd round. So for him to slide all the way to the 3rd, I thought that was a huge value pick. And without a question, Donovan Peoples-Jones, number 187 in the 6th round of the Cleveland Browns. I want to compare it, last year on our off-season recap, I talked about Mack Wilson being a player the Browns got in the 5th round that I thought could come in and make an impact. He did. I think Donovan Peoples-Jones. Why are you grinning? I did say it, right?
Was it a good impact? He wasn't very good.
I think he's a good football player. He's going to be a starter this year. I think Donovan Peoples-Jones has an opportunity to really solidify what the Browns want to do with their offense. They brought back Rashad Higgins, but I think Hollywood's going to be more of I think they're going to use him more in 4 receiver sets and things like that. I think when you look at Donovan Peoples-Jones, you look at his build. He's a big body, physical receiver. They can put him on the outside, opposite of OBJ. They can put Landry in the slot, which is where he absolutely, without a doubt, 100% needs to be. It helps open up their offense to what it really needs to be. And you talked about Jalen Reagor. I mean, the whole time that Donovan Peoples-Jones was at Michigan, he was a highly touted recruit. The whole time he was there, he had disappointing quarterback play And that's just the bottom line. So I'm really happy about that. So those are the good. Let's talk about the bad. What picks had you, scratching your head just from a reach standpoint, or just a bad fit, or whatever, character issues? Talk about some of the guys that you just didn't understand why that team took them at that position.
Well, I'll start with fit. And there's worse. There's more to this pick than just fit, but I'm going to start with fit, and that's Ruggs to Las Vegas. With Derek Carr, and we talked about this a ton on the show, so I don't want to rehash everything. I really like the player, don't get me wrong, but it's the first wide receiver taken. That means Judy and Lamb are still there. I just think that those were the two guys. Those were the two premier guys. I think especially a guy like Lamb would have thrived there as a guy that as a rat guy. Now I know that Ruggs led the country with 10 yards after the catch, but he's not just a straight burner. But it's just the fit there is just weird to me. Derek Carr has been always near the top with the lowest ADOT and average depth of target to receivers. So that one just didn't make much sense to me. Probably shouldn't have been the first wide receiver. As far as reaches, in the first round, at the end of the first round, Pete Carroll retains his crown as the most reaching head coach there. So in 2017, he reached on Rashad Penny. Took Rashad Penny at the end of the first round. Last year, it was L.J. Collier. I mean, Penny might have had a second round projection on him. He was closer to the third round. Collier was definitely around second or third. And this year, he takes Jordan Brooks. Not a bad player. He's not going to give you much in coverage, but I definitely thought that was a third round pick.
Yeah, for sure.
That was a guy where you feel comfortable taking him in the third round. Really outside of, I guess, Simmons, if he's going to be a linebacker. The drop off is pretty steep there after him and Queen. I don't think I'm taking another guy in that first round, and he was just one. And then finally, Jordan Love. I don't understand why. Like, since the pick, a buddy of ours, Patrick, big Green Bay Packers fan, switched his allegiance briefly on Thursday night. He said he was pulling for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers All-Stars, but he's back on board. But he was not happy with his pick, and I've been trying to figure out why. So I've been trying to play the devil's advocate in my head of why they made this pick. And Rodgers is on a clear decline. I mean, that much is very true. And I don't think the Packers are as close as they're perceived. You hear every time someone mentions this pick, all you hear is, well, why? They were 13-3, NFC Championship. Well, we saw what happened to them. I mean, they got torched by the Niners because they had no way to stop their run game. They have decent pass rushers, the Smiths that they added in free agency last year, but they needed they needed a wide receiver. They needed some more help defensively. They need safety. They need a couple guys in the middle. They need a linebacker. They need some defensive line help. And it was just a crazy pick to me. And then to trade up on top of it just made no sense. In reality, what they did was they still need to win with Rodgers under contract because he's got 3 years left. That's if you haven't just completely torched the relationship with him, which, if you saw Rapchich's tweet moments after that pick was made, said he felt lied to and deceived. That's not a great start for a guy that's like a legendary grudge holder. We know about how far he goes. And the bottom line is, unless you're the Patriots, your windows aren't very long in this league. Like, Aaron Rodgers just had a couple of them. The Packers may have just slammed it shut just because, maybe he wants out now, and we just haven't heard. It's just, I just really don't understand this pick from a multitude of ways, and I tried to figure it out and just can't come up with anything rational. But that's all I got. What do you got for head scratchers?
I want to touch on the Jordan Love thing. I mean, look, I think Aaron Rodgers needs to understand that 15 years ago, when Brett Favre was 35 and Aaron Rodgers is 36, 15 years ago when Brett Favre was 35, they drafted Aaron Rodgers at the end of the first round with the intention of sitting him 3 or 4 years, right, to learn behind a Hall of Famer. I think any player in the NFL that's afraid of competition, any player in the NFL that does not want or can't see the writing on the wall, these guys aren't going to play forever. You know, look, historically, I've said it in the past. I think one of the questions about Aaron Rodgers is him as a locker room guy, him as a teammate. Father Time's undefeated. I did not hate that pick. I'm not going to get into all the things about it, why I liked it or whatever. I'm not going to kill the Green Bay Packers for making that move. I think they felt like, obviously, they had a high grade on Jordan Love. They'll probably tell you he was the number one guy on their board, right? Because that's what they always say. But there comes a time when you say, okay, this is a guy that, you know, this is the highest rated quarterback we've had on our board in the last 9 years that's fallen this far in the first round, right? There had to be some type of an analysis from that point, and they made the decision that it was cheap enough, what was it, a fourth-round pick or whatever, to move up and to make that trade. So I'm not going to kill them. I will kill some other teams, though. I think Andrew Thomas at number 4 to the New York Giants, I think it's right on par. It's right on brand with Gettleman and the decisions that he makes. I will say this. Do I think that Andrew Thomas is a great player? Absolutely. I think he's got 42 starts in the SEC. He's a really good player. Very few experts had him rated as 1 or 2 on their tackle board. He was the majority of the time rated 3rd or 4th. I think that was on brand with some of the moves that they make. Daniel Jones, a running back at 2 when you need a quarterback. I just think that team. I don't get it. You talked about Ruggs. You know, Ruggs being the first receiver off the board.
Between us, though, just between us and nobody else that's listening. Just don't listen now. Who would you have taken it for?
Who would I have taken it for? If I was the Giants? If I was the Giants,
yeah,
I would have probably taken Derek Brown or Isaiah Simmons.
Okay. So you take a different position completely.
Yes.
Got it. Just want to get a little bit more understanding of that criticism. Not that I necessarily agree or disagree. Personally, I'm cool with them taking Thomas. It allowed us to get Wills.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I wanted to bash the Giants a little bit. I have a yearly Gettleman bash session, so it's nothing against him. He just always makes me right. I think that his picks are, whatever. He's just I don't think he's a good evaluator of talent.
Got it.
Henry Ruggs, being the first wide receiver off the board to the now Las Vegas Raiders at 12. You talked about Lamb and Judy still on the board. Look, I think Ruggs had fairly decent production while he was at Alabama, but Jerry Jeudy was on the other side. You don't draft a guy at 12 to be a number 2. I think he has to be the primary receiver for that team. I think that quarterback, they have 2 guys they have 2 first-round pick quarterbacks in Mariota and Carr. We'll see. I don't know. That to me was a head scratcher. I thought they reached, and then they turned around 7 picks later, and I thought they reached again. I think that Damon Arnett, the 3rd quarterback off the board to them at 19, I thought that was a huge reach. I thought there was a lot of other guys on the board. Arnett's a guy where you talked about possibly having a 2nd or a 3rd round grade. That's where he falls in line, right? The Pete Carroll mold, and they took him at number 19. There was a lot better players on the board in that position, and there was better players on the board in other positions of need for them. So that to me was a question mark. And the final one was Isaiah Wilson going at 29 to Tennessee. There was 2 tackles that I thought were better there. Ezra Cleveland, who went to Minnesota in the 2nd round, and then Josh Jones, who slid all the way to Arizona in the 3rd round. Look, we could all be wrong, but that to me was one that was I didn't get it. That was a wow moment for me, but there was a few other ones as well. So, who do you think had the best draft? Maybe one or two teams that you thought had the best drafts, and why?
Pure value wise, I already kind of hit on this. I think it was Dallas. I think Jerry just crushed it. I mean, I don't know if he was getting fed picks or what. I'm sure he was in contact with his guys all the time, but CD at 17 is the best value, like I talked about already. Diggs, corner from Alabama, is Josh Norman like. A lot of first round projections on Diggs. And Neville Gallimore, he was kind of seen as like a late riser. A lot of guys had a second round grade on him from what I saw. And then a lot of talk draft week, which I talked about on the show. Don't listen to anything you hear on draft week. There was a lot of talk that he could go near the back end of the first round. The Wisconsin center, I'm not going to try to pronounce his name. Tyler B is what I'm going to call him. If you'd looked at the early mocks last year, he was all over the first round, towards the end, because he is a center, maybe a guard. But I think that we saw a little bit of some cracks in that line last year. I think it was Travis Frederick. I'm not sure what's going on with him, but
yeah.
So now they got a replacement there, and they drafted him, I believe, in the fourth round. Came back for a senior year. He probably should have stayed and just went. And then the edge from Utah, and ton of third round projections. They got him in the fifth. I just think that was great value. Just from a pure value standpoint, I think that they crushed it. Now, another one that I really liked was Baltimore, unfortunately. Talked about Queen already. Maybe they go a little early on the running back.
I think they absolutely went a little early. But that, if you look at their draft top to bottom, that to me is the only hole.
I don't think it's a hole, though. Like I definitely think if he's not the best running back in the draft, to me he was the second best running back in the draft. And your little personal bias is showing there.
There's no personal bias. I just don't think he's.
But he's a perfect fit for what they do. He has experience with RPOs. He's good at the mesh point. Just great vision and great burst. Like I just think that he's a perfect fit within the structure of their offense and what they're trying to do. We know they signed 3-4 DNs this current offseason with Wolf, Derek Wolf and Calais Campbell. But Madubuike was pretty high up on most boards. And like you said, there's just not many holes on here. Really like Duvernay and Harrison. Those are guys that I know for a fact that the Browns had maybe not targeted, but they had talked about and they thought highly of. And then just to end with Prochet and Geno Stone from Iowa, the safety. It's about as strong as you're going to get from a 6th and 7th round pick. Prochet, they got Hollywood Brown last year, like we talked about Miles Boykin. They were looking at receiver early, decided not to go with it. They felt comfortable. Duvernay, as we talked about, he's going to play special teams. I just think that they crushed it from start to bottom. And then just real quick, I thought this was interesting. The Mahomes effect. Both Las Vegas and Denver. I don't think that Ruggs is a great fit with the Raiders, but I do like the player as a whole. And what these two teams decided to do, instead of just stacking up defenders to try and stop Mahomes and the fucking NASCAR drag team that they have in their division, is they went and tried to emulate it. They went and got Ruggs, Bowden, Brian Edwards. They went and got speed all over. Denver did a lot of the same thing. They back-to-back wide receivers with Jerry Jeudy, not exactly a speedster, but a huge catch radius because he creates separation all over the field. Elway is dead set on making sure that if Drew Lock fails, it's because Drew Lock's not good at football, which he very
the kid from Penn State's fast though. The KJ Hamler, yeah.
And we saw him do this a couple years ago when they took two receivers with Sutton in the second and then another kid from Penn State, Deshaun Hamilton, in the fourth. But Elway seems to be just making sure that it's that, and I just thought that was interesting that those two teams share a division with the reigning MVP and Super Bowl champion, and instead of trying to defeat them, they decided we're just gonna add speed too and try and see what we can do with it. And then I just want to throw this on top. I thought Tampa crushed it too. They got like all my favorite players from this draft,
and Tom Brady.
All my favorite players from this draft.
I thought there was a lot of teams that did well. You talked about Baltimore. I thought they did well. You talked about Denver. I thought they did well. I thought the Jets had a nice draft, especially on the top end. I thought the Browns had a really
good the Jets off.
Yeah, I thought the Browns had a good draft, and we'll talk about them a little bit later. So I won't use because I don't by any means think that they had the best draft. There's two teams that I thought did really well. I think the Minnesota Vikings did really well. In the first round, they got Justin Jefferson from LSU, the receiver. They got Jeff Gladney, the cornerback from TCU. On day two, they got Ezra Cleveland and Cam Dantzler, the cornerback from Mississippi State. On day three, when you're in value territory, they got Troy Dye, the linebacker from Oregon, who's a stud. They got Josh Metellus from Michigan, who's a safety linebacker guy, sort of a Swiss Army knife guy like an Xavier McKinney who went to the Giants earlier. And they got Kenny Wilkes, the edge rusher from Michigan State. I think anytime you look at a draft, when you get top-end talent, you get projects with a high ceiling, and you get a high volume of picks because they had a lot of picks. And there's a lot of sort of sexy names throughout there.
Picks.
Huh?
They had 15 picks.
They had a lot of picks. So you know what? We got top-end talent. We got some projects with high value. And then we're just going to go quantity over quality and hope some of these guys pan out, right?
The only thing that I'll say, though, is with this shortened offseason and maybe just like virtually, like it's just going to be so hard to – you don't have 15 spots.
I don't care if you got 5 rookies or if you got 15. Having a shortened virtual offseason is going to hurt some of these guys. It's going to hurt most of them.
Yeah.
The other team that I thought, hit a home run, I thought did very, very well, and it probably won't come as a surprise because I've talked about one of their players a couple times in here, and that's the Carolina Panthers. They got in the first, they got Derek Brown, who I've already talked. I think he's a top 3 or 4 player at 7. They got Jeremy Chin, the safety from Southern Illinois, who you loved, and I read a lot about. They got Gross Matos, the kid, the edge rusher from Penn State. They got both those guys in the second round. And then the fourth round, they got a cornerback from Notre Dame, Troy Pride, who had a significantly higher grade on him than a fourth-round pick. He was a high-value pick. They went all defense on that draft. I think they had 7 or 8 picks. Every single one of those guys was on defense. And I think they got 3 or 4 guys that are going to be 10-year starters in the NFL, 8 to 10-year starters in the NFL. I think they did a really good job. If you go back 4 or 5 years ago, the Carolina Panthers, their defense was their strength. It starts to fall off. They're in a little bit of a period of transition, obviously. I don't think they're expecting to win this year. So why not start to build that defense up now? Teddy Bridgewater he's a short-term. That's a short-term solution for them. I don't think they see Teddy Bridgewater as their starter for the next 7 or 8 years. To me, they're in the Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields sweepstakes with a couple of other teams. So I think for where they're trying to go organizationally and the type of players that they pick, I thought that they did a great job.
Yeah,
flip side.
No question about it.
Flip side.
Yeah, let's go.
Who do you think did shitty?
Now, I already mentioned Green Bay. I thought to back up that pick with AJ Dillon was just
that was another head scratcher, man.
Yeah, I was just shocked by it. I mean, again, we saw what the Niners did to them. They needed if they weren't going to go get a wide receiver and they didn't draft a wide receiver. And
no, they didn't. They did take a tight end though.
This is one of the most heralded classes since 2014. That class that had Beckham, Landry, all those guys. It was Watkins, Evans. I mean, it was just loaded. Allen Robinson. Didn't take wide receiver. They needed help up the middle. I just thought the draft was bad. I compared to what they've done recently with, I know Gutekunst, I think he's in his 2nd or 3rd year. I just thought it was really bad. But the teams I want to talk about are the Rams for one. I thought the Akers pick was weird. I just think that it's too high. It's too high. It was suggested that he would have had better production with a better offensive line. Well, the Rams have like a bottom 10 offensive line right now, and it's not going anywhere. They didn't draft any offensive linemen. That was a huge need of theirs till the 7th round. They took Van Jefferson, who I actually like. He's going to play special teams. Great pick. Took him in the 2nd round over Denzel Mims. That's just not
crazy.
It's just not great decision making. They drafted a kicker. For fuck's sakes. I don't care if it was the 6th, 7th, whatever. I don't care. Don't draft kickers. Just don't do it. Um, the window, I think the window there is closing fast too. We talked about window a little bit earlier.
I think it's closed, isn't it? I mean, they're not competing for a championship next year.
Well, it started to close with that huge contract that they gave Gurley. You know, they got a year out of him.
Play the Falcons now.
Yeah, exactly. Who, by the way, got cut. You know, Gurley's got all this money, and we find out, you know, a year after he gets paid, maybe he's really not all that. I think the window might be closed.
Yeah, I agree. Not so much shine on that Sean McVay tree anymore, is there?
Well, they just did a lot of really weird. They just made a lot of weird decisions where they went all in too much, and now they're trying to, like, I don't even know if they're trying to backpedal. It's just they're making really weird decisions.
Yeah.
All the trades with Ramsey, and you know, when they acquired Peters and Talib, and it's just on and on and on. Like, they just made these moves. Like, they had Sue for a year, and they just made these moves that just didn't make a ton of sense. Now, this is not like a terrible draft, but it's one that I questioned was Indy, because compared to just previous drafts, like, I love Michael Pittman. I think that was a fantastic pick. As you already mentioned, Jonathan Taylor, I'll just never understand trading up for a running back. It doesn't make much sense to me. Now, they do have a very good O-line, which leads me to my next point. They were 7th in rushing DVOA in the entire league. Not only do I think they didn't need to draft a running back in the second round, they definitely did not need to trade up for one. It's just very anti what we've seen from them over the past couple of years with what's the GM's name? I can't remember his name, but
Chris
Ballard.
Chris Ballard.
But there's rumors that they wanted to trade up for Love, and that's what then caused the Packers to move up. And I guess it's only fair to include DeForest Buckner, which they did trade their first round pick for. 13.
What was that? Was that a smart move?
Yeah, I think that it's a great move because you do need interior pressure to get after Mahomes. I think that they overpaid him a little, but that kind of goes along with trading a first round pick for a guy.
Look, they're in win now mode. They just signed a 40-year-old quarterback, right? So
I understand that, but like, you still have, like, we talked about the Browns, and God forbid we mention his name, Sashi, and the treasure trove of stuff that they had built up. The Colts are doing it in a lot similar way, just a lot better than Sashi ever did.
And they're still winning.
Well, that's what I'm saying. They did it a lot better. They were better at evaluation. They were better with their moves. They didn't completely tear it down, but just trading up for a running back and then just kind of going all in. Like, we talked about DeForest Buckner at 13. Lamb, Judy, and Kinlaw were all available at 13. Is Kinlaw DeForest Buckner? Absolutely not. Will he ever be? I don't know, but he'll be a lot cheaper. Lamb and Judy, they definitely need a wide receiver. I know they were high on Paris Campbell last year. I think they took him in the second or third round last year. And then the 49ers went and traded that pick for more picks. And in classic Chris Ballard fashion, they traded some more picks to get more picks, and they ended up doing okay. They ended up making, plenty of picks, but it was just very weird to see them do that after the 2 years of what we had seen. And I understand, like you said, they got the 40-year-old quarterback. It's just, why don't you just kind of just keep going where you're going, because you're doing a good job of it. I mean, we'll see. We'll see. It's not that I think Taylor's even a bad player. It's just, I'll just never understand trading up for a running back, especially when you have the seventh best rushing attack already.
The Browns traded up for Trent Richardson. You remember that?
I do. Very fun.
How'd that work out?
Exactly.
Look, I've bashed the Raiders. I'm not going to do it anymore. Yeah, actually, yes, I am. I talked about Ruggs, Arnett in the first round. Just too big of reaches on both those guys. When you got better players at those positions, and frankly, a handful of guys that are better at other positions that you need, I just think it's Mike Mayock, getting cute, trying to show everybody how smart he is. I think he might be getting a little jealous because I don't think he felt like Daniel Jeremiah was just going to move in and be like the top guy on NFL Network as quick as he is. And Daniel Jeremiah is better than Mike Mayock ever was. it wouldn't surprise me if eventually one day Daniel Jeremiah, well, he's been in an NFL front office before in some capacity as a scout and things like that. It wouldn't surprise me if Daniel Jeremiah got another job. But, you know,
That offers too.
Say that again.
He's had offers in the last few years.
I'm sure he has. I would think that picks like these, Ruggs and Arnett, potentially could cost Mike Mayock his job. So we'll see. The other team,
like I want to say, like I liked like their haul as a whole. I just think that because I like the players. Like Arnett was probably a reach, yes, for sure. Ruggs definitely shouldn't have gone to first wide receiver, but like I like the total haul, and I think that they just didn't do well with the value that they had.
You have to when you have 12 and 19, you got. I mean, we know we've been there. You know what I mean? It's unexcusable when you have multiple picks in the first round. You walk away with players that can't play. And I think at least one of these guys, possibly both of them, because I don't know if Ruggs is in a situation where he can be successful. So both these guys may walk away and not be successful. So that's a problem.
Go ahead.
The other team is the Patriots. I think everybody knocked the Packers for moving up and taking a quarterback. You know, the Patriots' starting quarterback as we stand today is Jarrett Stidham. They had 10 picks in this draft, and they didn't take a quarterback. Guys like Fromm, guys like Eason, who are available day 2, day 3.
The classic Bill troll. It's Bill trolling. Like, he's not going to do what you think he should do. Like, and to be honest with you, you know what? There's still a couple quarterbacks available. You know, one's available for trade that I think would do very well there, and from Cincinnati, who just took a quarterback number 1 overall. And there's another free agent that plays in the state that we live now that's available as a free agent.
They're not going to sign Cam Newton, first of all. So I think that's crazy. I think Andy Dalton's probably but still, is Andy Dalton your quarterback for the next 6 years? I mean, sign a guy like.
I don't see why I think that they did everything to say that they're all in on a quarterback for next year. Now, does that mean that they're going to tank for Trevor Lawrence? I don't think so. But I think they have an idea what they're going to try and do. I mean, can you imagine Bill Belichick tanking? I've heard that all week. I just don't see it. But like I said, there's those two guys out there. There's still, you still have next year's draft. We'll see. I think Stidham is kind of, if they go into the season and Jarrett Stidham's their starter, they're just clearly looking towards next year.
I think what makes me the angriest is I'm in a dynasty league, and last year I took N'Keal Harry with the number 1 overall pick in my rookie draft, and I'm just like, I'm paying him in a salary cap league. Like, he's got like 10% of my salary cap, and I'm just like, what am I going to do with this guy?
And honestly,
instead of throwing to him,
I honestly think Brian Hoyer's going to start.
He might. I don't. Look, I just
500.
I'm a little disappointed. I think, they could have took – what'd they pick at 23? They could have took Jordan Love at 23. They traded back, but they had the 23rd pick.
Yeah.
I don't know. So let's play a little game. Everybody knows the game MFK. You got to pick to marry somebody. You got to pick to make love to somebody, and you got to pick to kill somebody. We're gonna play our NFL draft version of that. So in the top 10, who is going to be a solid starter in this league? So we're going to play starter, Pro Bowl, or bust. Who's going to be a solid starter for the next decade? Who's going to be a Pro Bowler, perennial Pro Bowler, all-pro level guy? And who's going to be a bust out of those top 10 guys that were picked in the first round?
So how do you want to do this? You just want me to give you all 3? Okay.
Yeah.
I'll start with the Pro Bowler, and I went super easy, super chalk here. It's Joe Burrow. I don't think we're getting. I think you're getting Carson Palmer on steroids here. I think he can absolutely transform their entire organization. Guys, just to quote the late great Stuart Scott, as cool as the other side of the pillow. Dude's just got it.
Like the hat. I
do like that hat. That is big energy hat. We'll just leave it at that. But I think that he's the Pro Bowler for me.
I heard he's small hands.
The solid starter. Maybe he should retire like he suggested he might because of those small hands. The starter that I'm taking, maybe this is soft, maybe this is a little cop out, but I'm gonna say Tua Tagovailoa.
To a T.
I think Tua is gonna be. I think he's gonna be a solid starter for a long time. I think he's gonna hit some Pro Bowls. You know, like the injuries are obviously a concern, but I think that he's gonna be a pretty solid starter in a long time. Think not in terms of style, but in terms of like longevity, like Matt Stafford, maybe a little bit more successful than that. And he's been to several Pro Bowls. But bust, this is where I'm gonna get a little spicy on you. I'm gonna get a little spicy on you right here. Isaiah Simmons. Now, I want to preface this by saying I think that Isaiah Simmons is a phenomenal football player. I think that Isaiah Simmons is probably where the NFL is headed with positionless football. I just don't think they're there yet. These defenders, we heard today, Arizona's DC, I can't remember his name at the moment, has said he's going to play strictly linebacker. If that's the case right there, you've already lost value in picking him number 8 because, you know, part of his value is the fact that he's great in coverage. He doesn't quite have the fluidity and the change of direction that you need from defensive back at safety. But he's great in coverage. We know that. He can cover from linebacker, but you're still losing so much. And you look at some other guys that are tweeners. Just in Arizona alone, Deion Buchanan,
Reddick.
They looked at those 2 guys and were trying to do this, and they're still trying to make this happen. I just don't think that these guys adapt enough yet to make this guy work, unfortunately for him. He needs to be in a situation where he could be used like he was in Clemson, where he can line up all over the field. He lined up at slot corner. He lined up box safety, free safety. He lined up linebacker, middle linebacker, edge rusher. He lined up all over the field, and I think that's the kind of role that he needs. I'm just going to play the percentages there, and I'm going with the guy that's kind of a tweener that the NFL has demonstrated that you need a specific plan for as my bust. Can't wait to announce him in Canton here in 15 years.
Yeah. Those were good. My solid 10-year starter, I don't think this is going to come as a surprise to anybody because I've said the guy's name about 17 times. I think it's Derrick Brown. He's stud. He's a big-time athlete. He's a game-changing player at an important position. He's not just necessarily like a block eater. He is a pressure guy from the interior part of the line. I think he's going to make a big difference for the Carolina Panthers. I think he's going to be a solid starter for the next 10 years. The Pro Bowler, I don't think this is going to come to anybody's surprise either. I think it's Jedrick Wills. He's the missing piece for a team that's built to win now. He was the best tackle in that draft. I just think that that's a homer pick, but I feel really, really strong about that. The last time we took a tackle in the top 10 of the draft, it went pretty well for us. So I'm going to go with that. My bust is Joe Burrow. I think Joe Burrow's in an impossible situation. I think he's in a terrible organization. I think part of player development in this league, player success in this league, is also having an organization that nurtures their development. I really think when you look at that top 10, when you look at situations of an organization, Joe Burrow, there's nobody in a worse situation than Joe is from an organization. You have a young first-time head coach. You have a team that has a roster that's really bad that, you know, got a little bit better in the draft, but it's not a free agent's destination or anything like that. I just think that I've seen quarterbacks go early in the draft, get hit a lot early and those types of things, and it really stunts their growth. And I think that not because of Joe himself, I think Joe's a great talent, but I think Tim Couch is a great talent. You know?
Great talent.
Hey, you're out of your mind. Tim Couch is a great talent. You know, there's quarterbacks that go high all the time.
Let's settle that. He wasn't Joe Burrow.
It's a different game. I would argue without Tim Couch, there is no Joe Burrow.
But you know, like they are getting Jonah Williams back, top 10 pick last year.
Who's never played in the NFL.
No doubt about it. But he played left tackle when Jedrick Wills played right tackle at Alabama.
I hear you.
I understand. I understand your take.
Hey, this is my list.
My list.
You got your list. So
let's talk about the Browns. Tell me what you liked and didn't like about the Browns draft.
I really want to go pick by pick. I want to tell you.
How about you just take the next 2 or 3 minutes and just talk about the Browns draft? If you go pick by pick, that's fine.
I don't know if I have 2 or 3 minutes in me right now. I've got like 40.
Well,
Jedrick Wills. I may not have looked like it on Thursday night, but I am ecstatic with the pick.
Which, hold on. For the record, I told you would be. I think we had a text conversation last week on either Tuesday or Wednesday. I said, you'll talk yourself into liking whoever they pick.
I knew I was going to, but 72nd percentile athlete for an NFL O-lineman. I think I was just kind of, everyone knows that I was a Wirfs guy. I would have been happy with any of those 4. I had Wirfs ahead of them. I'm still not sold that Wills is better. Hearing a lot of talk about the switch, and we talked about it a little bit earlier, from right to left. He has never played left tackle dating back to high school. So that's a little bit of a concern to me. The good news is he has Hall of Famer Joe Thomas has already talked about, for one, he endorsed him as the number 1 tackle in the class. Him and Becton were both at the top of his list. But also they're going to work together on technique and getting him ready to go on that left side. But not only that, it's experience blocking. And I know I just bashed – I didn't just bash him, but I talked about Jonah Williams playing left tackle. He was actually protecting Tua's blind side because Tua is left-handed. So he does have blind side blocking experience, even though it's from the right side. And even free agent tackle that we signed, Conklin, talked about, we saw how hard it was. Not how hard, but it took him a while to get used to being over there on that other side. But ultimately, I think he'll be fine. Love the pick. Great. I might take 15 minutes right here. I fucking love Grant Delpit.
Oh my God! You are such a bitch. You are a fucking liar.
21,
you are a liar.
21 years old, 21.9 years old. Absolute fucking scud missile. This
you are a liar.
Insane.
You are fucking lying right
This dude is insane. 6'3", 213 pounds. Now, he didn't test. He was banged up a little bit last season. He played 15 games. The combine is less than 6 weeks later. So it's kind of understandable why he didn't test. But the rumor is that he was hurt pretty much most of the season. This is my time. I think that led to his slip a little bit. If you look, we talked about this a little bit earlier. If you look at last year's mocks, he was all over the top 10 in all of those mocks, all over the top 10 early mocks. Now, granted, those things mean nothing, but it means that he had a great 2018. Like I said, I think the injury led to it. His instincts, recognition, and reaction time are just otherworldly. I haven't done a ton of safety work, a ton of safety tape grinding, but just watching him move on these on just instinct plays where he's coming up to make hits, unbelievable. Now, because the way he moves and the way that he pursues, he tends to be a little he tends to over pursue and miss tackles, but it's not like a lack of want to or a lack of technique. Maybe it is technique, but as we talked about like last year with Greedy Williams, where the guy just didn't want any part of tackling anybody. It's not really the case here. It's just that Delpit leaves his feet a ton, and he tends not to wrap when he does. He just gets his angles are great. He just tends to leave his feet. He's a tight end eraser. He has all of those qualities to just erase a tight end, which if you've watched Browns games at all over the last 10, 12 years, we can't defend a tight end to save our ass. Here's probably my favorite part. 316 snaps at slot cornerback, 348 at free safety, 159 in the box or at the line of scrimmage, and then 10 more just split out wide. He can play all over the field. He's most likely to line up at free safety with Carl Joseph at strong safety this year. They can do a lot of things with these two guys in the field together, though. They're going to be great in coverage. They're going to hit a ton, and that's just a ton of just instinct back there. And then you throw in Sendejo, and I love the safety core. He combined for 7 interceptions, 16 pass breakups, and 7 sacks over the last 2 years. He does it on all 3 levels. We talked about the missed tackles is definitely an issue, but he can play in coverage, he can play the run, and he can pass, and he can rush the passer.
You're a fucking liar. I am going to expose you.
He was a team captain team captain at LSU, and Coach O actually called him the face of the team in 2018. And he wore the famed number 7 at LSU, as we've seen with many of those defensive backs. Moving on, Jordan Elliott. PFF actually had a first-round grade on him. He was their 23rd overall player. I think the value is great. He doesn't have tools of like a Brown or a Kinlaw, so he's never going to be in those conversations as a top 10 as an interior defender. But Ogunjobi's in a contract year, and last year he had 54 pressures in his final season at Missouri, which compared to just 20 in his first, and that's an 18.7% pass rush win rate. That led all interior defenders. That was more than Kinlaw and Brown, and just a little less than them two combined. I did hear a little bit about character, which I don't know where it came from. I don't know if it was because he was a little overweight, but he lost 30 pounds headed into his final year at Missouri. Was also voted a captain. Don't think that's I don't see much character there. Just transformed his entire body. Like I said, he went from 20 pressures to 54. 54 pressures in a college season is insane. Jacob Phillips, we could talk about it for a minute. I like it. I don't love it. A little on the smaller side at 6'3", 229, but he is a 70th percentile athlete for a linebacker. He's not going to give you a ton in coverage, but he's a downhill, sure tackler. Maybe I kind of think that maybe with these two picks, with Delpit and Jacob Phillips, that they're maybe thinking about Lamar Jackson a little bit too much here. But I think at that point, your choices were at linebacker at, let's see, it was the 3rd round, 33rd pick, 97 overall. Really only on the board that I would have considered over him was Troy Dye, who I probably would have taken, who is pretty much the exact opposite. He's a lot better in coverage, not a ton to write home about as, a run defender. And Malik Harrison, who is kind of the same mold, like a thumper, run defender. You pretty much interchange those two. I think I probably preferred Harrison. But aside from that, no real problem there. Harrison Bryant, kind of a tweener. He's definitely an F type, though. He's not going to play in line. They just picked up Njoku's option, which is interesting with these two. Tight ends have the steepest learning curve, steeper than quarterbacks, as far as from the time that you draft them to the time that you start to see their success. It's very rare when you have a guy like Gronk or Hernandez who come in and just kind of light the world on fire. Like even Kelsey took some time. Njoku, obviously, he's had his issues. I think last year was more of a issue with who was coaching. I don't necessarily think it was an on-the-field type thing. But great routes from Harrison Bryant. That gives us 3 viable tight ends, maybe 4 if you keep Carlson on the roster, as we just signed Austin Hooper. Pretty stacked at tight end, and I like they're going to run a ton of 21 and a ton of 12 personnel. And he's somewhere on that Cameron Brate, Hunter Henry. He's probably closer to Cameron Brate, but he's on that spectrum. Nick Harris picked him up as a trade down with Delpit, which makes that Delpit pick even better. Maybe a guard. He's listed as a center. I just think that Treader signed a 3-year extension in November. Like, he's not going anywhere. So I think maybe they're looking at him to play guard. He did have a lot of starts at guard before he switched to center at Washington. And then, as you touched on earlier, Donovan Peoples-Jones, just 99th percentile NFL athlete, the wide receiver position. Ruggs was the only other one in this class that was 99%. 6'1", 212, freak athlete. Drops were an issue. I know that we talked about the quarterback play. Definitely not premier or top notch in any way, shape, or form. But I love the pick there. That's the exact type of guy that you want to take a flyer on. I know you've given me shit over the years. We talked about it when we had 3 4th-round picks and took the kid from Auburn. I can't remember his name now. But Ricardo Lewis.
Rico Lewis.
He fits in this mold, and it's even better because you get him in the 6th round. But he's obviously a much better athlete. He was much more heralded coming out. Maybe even a more talented wide receiver, definitely. But I think it's a perfect type for a 6th-round flyer. So overall, just let me recap real quick on you.
Please.
I love the first 3 picks. When I first had wrapped all this up, I thought I might have taken a receiver earlier. when I went back and looked who was available at 41, it was Chenault, Claypool, Mims, and I like all three of those guys. Claypool ends up on the dark side over there in Pittsburgh, but Delpit fills a need, and he is my favorite pick of the Browns' entire draft. I'd probably go with Dyer Harrison over Phillips, but I'm not going to nitpick there. Same with maybe Albert O, who Denver got, and I'd already talked about how much I love Denver's draft. They got weapons all over. Late picks are fine, and like I said, I love that DPJ flyer. So like I just think that overall, I think it was a very good draft. We picked up a third next year, so I think that we're in really good shape. We got I can't remember how many picks we have next year. It's a lot though, so we're in good shape moving forward. Hit me.
I was going to talk about the Browns draft, but now I'm just going to talk about how big of a liar you are. I want everybody in America that's watching this to know one thing. Grant Delpit is my guy.
As I said, Grant Delpit is my favorite pick.
I've been talking about, don't worry, we're going to get to it. I talked about Grant Delpit for the last couple weeks, how much I wanted him. I want to go back to 7:32 on Friday evening, the moment that the Giants selected Xavier McKinney. This is Luke's text. Damn it, we're definitely getting Delpit now. Later, when we drafted Delpit, I gave the Denzel training day gift, boom, because I was so happy. And he fits right in with the rest of the guys on the defense that can't tackle. I called him Baby Jamal. He said, hilarious. Yikes.
I do think Jamal Adams stuff is a little far-fetched right now.
Hold on. He said this dude can't catch tight ends in college. How's he going to chase down Eric Ebron? So bad. I just wanted America to know this. He's a liar, and that whole thing was a lie. Because
these are lies.
Grant is my guy. Okay.
Grant Delpit is a fucking scud missile, baby. I'm buying the color rush Delpit.
So now here's my thoughts. I give the Browns an A on their draft, maybe an A-. I think time will tell. I think, they got top-end Pro Bowl potential in rounds 1 and 2. I think Grant Delpit, I already talked about Wills being a Pro Bowl potential guy. I think Delpit's a Pro Bowl potential guy. They got depth and versatility in rounds 3 through 5 with Elliott, Phillips, Harrison Bryant. I've heard a lot of guys through the course of this week talk about how, Harrison Bryant could be one of those guys that you look back on 4 or 5 years and talk about, like, why did this guy slide so low in the draft? He should have been a first-round kind of guy. And then you talked about Nick Harris. We're in a position now where we don't have to draft guys and hope that one day they can be starters, right? You draft a guy like Nick Harris, he can play 3 positions on the offensive line, right? So I really like the depth and the versatility that they got in rounds 3 through 5. And then, I talked about Donovan Peoples-Jones. He's probably the steal of the draft. I think it's almost a certainty that he potentially is going to be in the mix for Rookie of the Year next year, because this is a guy that could come in, 50, 60 catches, 8 to 10 touchdowns. He's going to be a big target on the goal line. Obviously, we have other big targets on the goal line, but he's going to be a guy that, they throw those fade routes over in the corner to OBJ all the time. Those are going to DPJ. And I'm really excited about what these guys did. I'm really glad you came around on Grant Delpit. I love it. If
those targets go to Grant Delpit, or I'm sorry, if those targets go to DPJ over OBJ, over Austin Hooper, over Njoku, over even Harrison Bryant, we've seen what Higgins can do near the goal line. I want Stefanski fired.
You want Stefanski fired?
If DPJ is taking end zone targets away from those guys.
If the guy who plays wide receiver, who registered the highest vertical at the NFL Combine this year, if the player who plays wide receiver that registered the highest vertical at the NFL Combine this year is getting goal line targets. You want the head coach fired?
I said end zone targets, and if he's taking those away from our best players, even Jarvis Landry on the fucking goal line is a better option than Donovan Peoples-Jones.
You didn't know he had the highest vertical at the draft this year, did you?
I knew he had a high one. I don't care that it's the highest.
The highest.
That's great. That's great. Look, I said I liked him. I think that if the Browns thought that he was going to be a candidate for Rookie of the Year, they probably don't sign Rashard Higgins back. That's what I think.
Who you want out there? Ratley and Willies and all those guys running around? I mean, we're in the big leagues now, right? Like, you got to have third, fourth, fifth wide receivers that can come in and contribute, and we haven't had that for 20 years.
I know, and I think that's what they drafted Peoples-Jones for.
I think it's to be continued. I think it's easy for us here on our draft recap show to talk about this. All I'm saying is I think potentially DPJ could be a guy that that ends up being a steal of the draft along with Harrison Bryant. So you got anything else you want to throw in there before?
No, just that the Grant Delpit jersey is on the way.
Man, I can't even believe you. Like, you're a fraud, man.
Maybe
like,
I was frauding the whole time to drop this on you on the pod.
What? I love you, man, and I love everybody out there. Thanks for watching. We appreciate everything. If you have a chance, we're gonna post it. Go back and watch our draft coverage.
Through it.
If you're not following us on social media, follow us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, follow us on Instagram at WC Sports Pod. If you haven't liked or subscribed to our YouTube page, which is new now, which we will be distributing these quarantine chronicle videos of ours, it's at WC Sports Pod on YouTube too. With that, we thank you for your time, and go Brown.